I hope you'll entertain me for 6 minutes, and this might bring up more questions for you than answers, and that's okay because this is a stream of consciousness at the moment. You may have seen some of this language, but in 2026, this is a big rock for myself and Riders and Elephants, potentially some of our community. But I've been exploring over the last 6 months, especially the deeper I go with Professor Michael Park, into this idea of emotional evidence. And more importantly, how we shift from a deck to a system and from fluffy and soft measures to hard measures. Because for better or worse, as humans, we rely on heuristics to make decisions, form opinions or perspectives about things because it's easier. We don't have the energy to really comprehend or dive into or dig into every single detail in our life. And when we talk about the emotional culture deck being a deck or a simple, playful pack of cards, the mental heuristic or shortcut is, well, that can't be significant or have an impact because it's small and playful and fun and rinky-dinky. And we all have experienced, and people in our community have experienced, the profound impact of the emotional culture deck. But more importantly, the tools, the conversations, all of the things that wrap around the deck. And for better or worse, because of that mental heuristic that we have as humans, when we say system, people think significant, maybe impactful, larger, broader. There's a natural connection to something larger and more significant. And part of this is a brand piece for Riders and Elephants, but also how we codify our entire ECD universe, all of the specialist tools and the conversations. And my insight is that tools don't change culture, but systems do. And we, for better or worse, have been focusing on let me start with because not everybody's doing this, but certainly I have been focusing on the cards, the tools, when they don't necessarily change culture, but systems do. And that means me, us as a community potentially, and anybody who uses the deck needs to start considering how we sell the system, but not the deck. And by sell, I don't necessarily mean financially sell. You may be a coach or a consultant, so that could be the sell. But if you work inside an organization, that could be just how you get buy-in to the concept. How you get people to go, yes, I want to do that. Yes, that sounds significant, not small and playful and, well, we'll just do one of it and never come back to it. And so I think that means we need to think about how we sell the system and not the deck. And I've been working on this for a while now, and you may have seen this language, and you'll definitely see more of it next year. This idea that we actually have, and what has emerged as a whole emotional culture system. It's a system of conversations that changes how people feel, behave, and perform. Some of you may recall that in the very first masterclass, the culture crafting course that you did way back when, I told a story about how at the time I was working on values projects and they were focusing on cognitive culture, the value set, and then most companies focus on that and they move to behaviors and everybody ignores emotion. And that's still true. The contrast between emotional culture and cognitive culture still exists, and it's there, and it's still baked and imbued in what we do. But at the time, I was talking about it specifically in relation to values, how we help a culture and organization create values. But what I've realized is there's a level above this that was inherently there, but it wasn't the focus of my attention, or I didn't believe at the time just a pack of cards could do that, which it can now because of the extreme, not the extreme, but the depth of the system of conversations that has emerged. And what is true still, what is definitely true, is that emotion drives how we behave, and how we behave ultimately impacts and drives our performance. And I know this from a personal perspective and from a team perspective, because in my professional cricket career, I was struck down horrifically by performance anxiety and fear, terrified of failure. That impacted how I showed up, how I behaved on the field, which ultimately impacted my performance and meant that my cricket career was incredibly short and painful, and I never achieved anything like I was able to achieve lower down when I wasn't experiencing those emotions. But I've come to realize it's a circular thing. Emotion drives behavior, behavior informs how we perform, and how we perform is impacted by our emotion at an individual level and at a collective level. And so if we do believe that emotions do drive our performance, we want to make them measurable. And for us to confidently and bravely and courageously say and show the system, we need to be able to make the work we're doing measurable. And my question, my how might we question, I love a good how might we question, is how do we turn emotional culture into measurable data and evidence that gives leaders the research-backed system to improve performance? And so my massively audacious, it's not even a big, hairy, audacious goal, massively monumental, ginormously audacious goal in the next 2 years, depending on me raising a significant amount of money for our business, is to build a system that makes it beautifully simple to track and measure and analyze and share the evidence of our emotional culture work. Because ultimately, I do believe, and what is becoming clearer and more evident the more people I work with and the more I see what is possible, and some really incredible leaders like yourselves are doing with this, with the emotional culture there, because it's not just the cards themselves that are causing that. It's all the things you put around it, all the conversations that form a larger system, and the stuff you put into that as well, your own work, your other tools, etc. That system is what's changing culture, if it's culture that you're changing, or performance, or whatever it might be. And so next year, my goal is to do those two things simultaneously, is tell more about the story of the system, not just the cards, to help shift the perception that people have that this is small and insignificant and can't be impactful because it's a pack of cards. Whereas you know it's more and you've experienced as more than that, but I haven't yet found a way to help you tell that story because I've been stuck in 8 years ago, which is when it was just a set of cards. And I can't continue to say it's more than a pack of cards, or it's gone beyond a pack of cards. We actually need to show people that now. And that's part of the shift that you'll see next year. And I'd love your input on that and your reaction to it eventually, not right now because we've gone over time, I'm sorry. As you see more of this, and as you experiment with it yourself, when you meet somebody and you sit down, and this is not taken away from the fact that the deck of cards, the emotional culture deck, will always be the core tool at the center of that system. It'll always be the gateway that allows you to sit down and get the cards out and have a play. But then the most important thing is I need to find a way for you and us to be able to measure the impact of the work you're doing so you can have both those conversations, not one of them. And the work we've been doing with Professor Michael Parker is helping me see that. And you'll see and be invited to be part of some more of that work next year. But ultimately, I'd love to be able to turn this actually quite tangibly and physically into a system rather than just a pack of cards, but that will always be the gateway, I hope. So that's what's on my mind at the moment for you all. I wanted to end on that to see where we are going, not just as an elephant rider community, but as a business, but also how that language might be able to interweave into the work you're doing. So thank you so much for sticking with me for that little bit of extra time there.